All right, so episode 7, Celebrity Traitors, episode 7, part 2. So, Joe explained here he had nothing to lose, there was caution to the wind, and they needed to catch a traitor. Alan explained that Jonathan Ross's name was on everyone's lips, and Nick said that they owe it to all the faithfuls and banished that have gone so far, and to those that will obviously be going, especially 2 days before the final, they need to get a traitor. And Jonathan questioned whether they have got his number at last, whether they have enough people to vote him out, or whether he is being unnecessarily worried about the whole situation. So at the round table, Claudia explained that the figure that they have earned so far in their jackpot was 53,500. Bearing in mind the total is 100,000, so they've over halfway in the series, and we're now over halfway in the amount of money they've earned, which is fantastic. Kate decided to start the round table, saying that she thinks that there are people who have mentioned her name along with the names of people like Jonathan, David, and Nick. So she said if anyone has anything to say about her, to bring it forward and she'll fight it. Or if anyone has anything to say about any of the other names, they might as well all start, speaking their theories. David kind of wanted to change the topic of conversation. So he was like, I know there's people that think it might be me, but I feel like I want to try and change the conversation a little bit and talk more about clues. So he said that, the whole situation with Joe not being happy, well, the fact that he actually initially said the fact that Nick wasn't happy with the changing of the teams, why did he randomise that? Just before Nick was about to speak, Joe jumped in and said, right, if you have a little think back, what actually happened is that Claudia asked whether people were happy with the teams. Everyone said yes, and it was Joe that stepped forward and said that he wasn't happy with the teams. So he did it because he felt that he had less traitors on his side, and he wanted to be able to see and watch and observe what the traitors were to do by being on the same team as them. And he said what he wanted to do is just ruffle some feathers. And the theory of letting things play out obviously hasn't worked before, which is why he decided to try and do something different. He also said, I want to hear from Alan. I haven't heard from you in a while, Alan. I feel like you don't really speak much at the round tables. So Alan kind of looked a bit confused and was like, do I not speak at round tables? And people were like, well, you haven't spoken for a while, and these are probably the most these are the most engaging round tables we've had and the most action that's happened, and then you decide to go quiet, bearing in mind you're quite a loud voice. And Alan basically felt like, the whole situation with David and Mark, where they had their votes and then all of David's votes just disappeared. He felt like that was quite a traitory thing, that, the votes disappeared because the traitors initially wanted to vote for him and then maybe retracted their votes or whatever. Kat said that she was actually suspicious of Jonathan. Celia said that she's also voting for Jonathan and she's going to stick with her gut because she initially wanted to go for Jonathan. She ended up going for somebody else and now is actually going to stick with her gut of going for Jonathan. But the interesting thing here is episode 7 is the first time Traitor has actually now gone for Traitor. So I think in the previous episode, I think you had people questioning, like the traitors questioning the other traitors, identity and whatever. I think out of the 3, Jonathan is the weakest. Just because he has so much heat and fire on him at the moment. The other 2 are, trying to decide whether it's too early now to start, fighting for him or fight against him. So at this point, Kat was like, I'm suspicious of Jonathan. I think at this point, Alan had to kind of follow suit. Otherwise, he'd get taken down next, or she'd come after him, or he'd come after her. But in the end, when it came down to the vote-ins, as you can see here, it's quite clear. Other than Jonathan, who voted for David, and David, who voted for Nick, everyone else voted for Jonathan. So Jonathan came to the table with Claudia and said, I've been faithful the whole way through to the traitors. So they were all very excited and happy and whatever. And I think what the best thing for them to have done in this situation was to look at the reactions of everyone. So if someone's genuinely more happy or less happy or, looking at other people, they're the people you want to look at, the people that are looking at everyone else, because they're looking as a traitor at how people are reacting. Whereas you as a faithful, you're looking to see how the traitors are looking at the faithful. So it's kind of that weird 3-way camera thing. It's like the faithful look at each other, see who's faithful, see who's not. The traitors are looking at the faithful to see how they react. And as a faithful, you want to look at how the traitors are looking at the faithful. That's the easiest way to explain it. So in the end, it was bye-bye to Jonathan. And, it was a difficult departing, but he had a lovely green suit on. If he's ever selling that or getting rid of that, I'd love to buy it. It's a really lovely colour as well. But he just said here that he hopes the other 2 stick together, that Kat and Alan get all the way to the end together and then win it for the traitors. As the oldest of the 3 traitors, he wants them to go on and prosper, basically. Celia explained that she was sad for Jonathan, but she's glad that she stuck to her guns. And Joe explained to Kat that it's so good to find the traitor, and they've played it, and that he played it so well. And he said that he's got a shield, so he's going to sleep well tonight. So it's up to the others to try and survive. And Joe had a quick chat with Kate and Celia. Obviously, all three of them are faithful, but he said to the two girls, he said, look, when they usually go out, you've got to think about who they last vote for on the table when they feel like they're going to be leaving. He voted for David. Does that mean David's a traitor, or is that just a name that was just thrown out there? So they're all now questioning and thinking about that. Again, a lot of heat on David, but all for the wrong reason, because he's obviously not a traitor. And then Celia also quickly jumped in and said, why don't we think Alan's a traitor? He's flown under the radar from day dot. He's so adorable, but is that maybe even more of a reason for him to be a traitor? So I think it's going to be between David and Alan on the next one. I think Joe is gunning... Well, I think this is the thing. I don't really know who's gunning for who. I know Celia didn't like Jonathan, didn't trust Jonathan, and they've now got him out. So are they going to go for Nick? Are they going to go for Celia? Are they going to go for Kate? Or are they going to go for David? Like I said, none of them, the traitors, it's Alan and Kat, but obviously we know that they don't. And then the traitors, so Alan and Kat both had to go into the room where, the people get murdered. And Claudia, well, the note that was left for the both of them was that they needed to toast the player that they wanted to kill in plain sight. So there was no talking in the turret, no discussing. It was literally go back to the house, quickly try and find each other, have a discussion, do a toast, and then say the word, parting is such sweet sorrow, and do a toast and say the person's name of the person that they wanted to murder in the game. So I feel like if that doesn't make it obvious enough who the traitors are, then I don't really know what is, but they can always, blame it on somebody else. Kat explained she wasn't sure how to tell Alan without everybody else listening because he's got such a loud voice. David was talking to Nick, basically asking Nick who didn't vote for Jonathan, and David said, well, the only person that didn't vote was me. So it almost seems like the traitors actually voted for their own people, their own selves. And then Kat basically, when she was talking to Alan about, who do you think should do the toast, she was like, Alan should do it. And he was like, me again. She basically said, why don't you just say it's a quote that Stephen said to you? Because obviously Stephen's this very wise, older gentleman with lots of wise quotes and things like that. You could just say, look, Stephen told me this quote. She couldn't even remember it at first. And he was like, what am I even saying? Parting is such sweet sorrow. And then the name of the person they wanted to murder. And Alan said, why is it always me? Why is it always me doing the dirty work for the traitors? So, yeah, that was it for episode 7. So I think we currently have 7 people left. We have Alan and we have Kat. And then we have Kate, Celia, David, Joe, Nick. I can't remember. There's another one as well. There's somebody else, but I can't remember. Let me just double check. All right, so there are actually only 7 people left. So you got your traitors at the top, Kat and Alan. And then you got Nick faithful, Joe faithful, Celia faithful, Kate faithful, and David faithful. So they are your final 7 contestants. So everyone else out of the game, 13 of them gone. We've got 2 traitors, you've got 5 faithful. So let's see what happens in the next episode. But at the moment, I think out of the 2 traitors, I think I think Alan is your strongest traitor. The fact that he doesn't come across as a traitor, but obviously he is. Kat's kind of growing on me a little bit. Like, she's actually doing really, really well. The fact that she's staying under the radar, building different relationships with some of the contestants, I think, especially with Celia. I think she's the youngest and she's the oldest, so if they can have a bond and if she can trust Kat, then Kat should get to the final. Obviously, Nick and Joe, very smart guys. They've got so many ideas and so many plans and so many names under the radar. Celia's obviously doing very well. Kate's kind of just a bit there for me at the moment. She just needs to do more, unless she ends up just being a floaty faithful towards the end. You don't know. And then David, again, has lots of theories, doesn't really do anything with them. So, when Joe was kind of saying to people, you need to bring stuff to the table, he said that to Ruth, he said that to Kate, he said that to Lucy. I think all of them just need to be more honest and vocal and bring their theories forward. Otherwise, these two are going to take them out, or they'll end up taking each other out, and then they'll all end up taking each other out, and it'll just start becoming messy. So, yeah, Kat, Alan, Nick, Joe, Celia, Kate, and David are your final 7. So, yeah, let's see what happens in episode 8, and hopefully they can get rid of another traitor. But, I don't even know what team I'm on, Team Traitor or Team Faithful. But, yeah, I have no idea. I don't know who I want to win. But, yeah, anyway, we'll see what happens in episode 8. Okay, bye.